You're listening to Technomics, connecting you to insights on digital transformation and the marketplace, with your hosts Robin Ituli and Jeremy Nilsson. The hosts' opinions are their own. Enjoy the show.
Jeremy, where have you been?
Where haven't I been, I think is a better conversation. Unfortunately, the answer is here.
You have been out on a lot of client calls lately, and I applaud your support.
I have. We love our clients.
We do.
That requires some time.
But it's also really fun to get to be face-to-face with them.
Oh, absolutely. Of all places I'd like to be, it's with our clients, helping to make sure that they get what they need.
And you have lots of ways to connect with them, even if you're not face-to-face, I presume.
Oh, absolutely. In fact, some of the projects we're doing right now and that have required me to be absent have been around enabling clients to communicate more effectively from where they are without having to fly all over the country.
Which is something that I'm sure they just want you face-to-face. I can't say that I blame them.
Well, I mean, I can't either.
While you were out, I got to have a really great conversation with Matt Jackson, who is part of the BlueMetal team, and we were talking about applications in the workplace. What was really interesting for me was this idea that so much of what they are working on and developing right now is the impetus for it isn't coming from the enterprise, it's coming from the consumer space. So things like Pokemon Go are really starting to reshape the way that enterprise IT are thinking about their applications.
That's fantastic. Well, I mean, it's not fantastic. I missed it, but what a great conversation. As a frequent subscriber to launching Pokemon Go on my phone, I can definitely see the business implications there.
Have you captured any in the office?
I've captured quite a few in the office.
Any like real zingers?
No, it's the typical Pokemon fare. Most of it is airports. That's where I've really got my good ones.
Which sounds like you've collected quite a few.
I have, more than I should probably admit to.
Well, you got to catch them all. Coming up next, we are going to have a great conversation with Matt Jackson, and we might talk about Pokemon Go again.
Your Dynamics CRM system is vital to your sales process, and more importantly, your business growth. However, think of how important customer insights are to your marketing teams, customer service teams, public relations, social media interactions, and the list goes on. Let BlueMetal take your Dynamics CRM to the next level with full lifecycle customer relationship management, enabling you to attract and retain customers, define and improve sales processes, offer consistent interaction across all sales and services channels, a full 360-degree view of your customer with ubiquitous access, including mobile platforms. And BlueMetal's connected field services allows for proactive service delivery and real-time insights as to how and when your customers are using your products, resulting in improved service level performance and with the ability to leverage Internet of Things-based telemetry, metrics, and predictive analytics to have a real-time view of how and when your customers are using your product and proactively schedule service, raising quality and reducing costs to you and your customer. To learn more, visit insight.com/BlueMetalCRM. That's insight.com/BlueMetalCRM.
All right, without further ado, let's dive into our interview with Matt Jackson, Director of Services and part of our BlueMetal team. Matt, welcome to Technomics.
Thank you. Looking forward to it.
Awesome. So this season, we're talking about workforce enablement. So it's all the things that revolve around the universe of our work lives. And today, we're really trying to pin down what are the applications that are going to drive us into the future and help businesses like ours and other companies run smarter. So without really taking any more time to get to the heart of this, what is the biggest contributor to growth and use of apps in the workplace?
Yeah, I think it's just a total demographic and expectation shift among modern workforce and modern employees. Think about their personal lives, the advancements in, technology with mobile devices and the app model, but then also just, a shift in work-life balance, people working remotely, people not necessarily tied to a desk in an office. And all those things come together and create an expectation of a modern employee that they're going to be able to access systems, access company data, and perform work activities wherever they are and whenever they need to do it.
So what's the way that you feel apps help you the most in your working life?
I probably come to it from two dimensions, right? I build apps for our clients, and then I use apps. I think some of the great examples of my own personal use is, I'm on the road a lot. I manage offices across the country, and when I'm traveling, I still need to, obviously do email, but even more than that, access enterprise systems. So, manage my expenses, enter in or manage my travel plans, review contracts, collaborate with peers. And so I think about my phone and all the unique applications I have to support that. Some of them are public applications where I expect my company, Insights data to be available through those. But some of them are applications that my employer provides to me so I can get my job done on the road, or in the office, wherever I may be.
I think there's a case for saying that a lot of those enterprise applications offer some pretty lofty goals in their ability to help people like you who are fairly mobile in their day-to-day jobs increase their productivity or feel empowered to create that better customer experience or facilitate collaboration. Do you think that the enterprise app universe is living up to it right now?
I mean, it's definitely behind the consumer space. I think, software, manufacturers, ISVs that really target consumers were much further ahead of the curve. But that's actually led to that expectation within the workforce. So people see it in their personal lives, and any type of thing that used to be a website, whether you're buying clothes online or paying your bills, is now an app. And you get very used to task-based applications to get your personal work done. You expect that when you come to your job. And so when I think about, the applications that we build for our clients, the expectation is there that, the employers are going to be providing tools that the employees can use to be more productive, just like they are in their home lives. And that's really driven our growth. If you think about, where we've come in the last few years, two major developments have happened. One, the app model, right? So moving away from just, at your desk terminal, getting work done to using web, responsive web applications or native applications, and then the cloud, right? And so it's not just about getting a tool into the hands of an employee. It's about getting the data there. And I think the explosion, not just in use of the cloud, but in trust of the cloud, has really allowed us to help our clients move their enterprise data up to an area where it's more accessible to those mobile users. So, the enterprise, to answer your question directly, the enterprise is a few years behind the consumer space. But I think that that's driven the growth that we've seen, and they're rapidly catching up.
I mean, regardless of whether we're talking about the apps that we're using in our personal life or the apps that we're using when we come into the office, there's a pretty robust library that is out there. So if you're a company who's really starting to build out what that application library looks like, where do you start and what should it include?
It's a great question, and it hints at kind of a further layer here, which is, on one hand, you want to make it easy, right? If a company had the company app, right, and it could provide all of the enterprise services that an employee may need, it would be easier to find on a device that already has dozens or hundreds of apps. But that's not what users are used to. They're used to opening an app that does a specific task. And so I think, when we're working with clients, it's finding that right balance of, do you start to introduce individual applications? I think, for Insight, I've probably got, 10 or 12 apps on my phone, some for travel, some for collaboration, email, et cetera. Or do you try to maybe make a more comprehensive app? If I travel, I don't go to the JetBlue ticket app and the JetBlue, travel app and the JetBlue reservations. I go to the JetBlue app, right? And so in that sense, they've made it easy to find all the functionality. So, to boil it down, I think what we see more, though, is that, your relationship with your employer, with your workforce, with your teammates is such a pervasive part of your life that encompassing that all in one blanket application is a bad user experience. And really, to satisfy the needs of all the disparate ways that you may need to work remotely or work through applications, chunking it into apps, individual apps, allows you to do two things. One, create dedicated experiences for what you're trying to do. So you might have a collaboration app for sharing documents or information. You might have an expense app for filing expenses and receipts. You might have, obviously, an email app, but you might have a legitimate enterprise app, and we'll probably talk about that a little later in the conversation. The other thing that allows you to do, though, and I think this gets to part of your question, is, where does an enterprise start? And by chunking it out into individual task-based applications, it makes it much easier to capture some low-hanging fruit. Whether that's purchasing an app that's already out there that you can then adapt for your workforce, or building one natively, you can start small and start to introduce functionality over time rather than try to boil the ocean on day one.
I really, really thought that you were going to kick that section off by saying your relationship with your mobile device, which would actually be the most appropriate segue for my follow-up question, which is, how are the apps that we're using personally influencing business apps? And what features do you anticipate we're going to start to see in those applications that are really emerging in more of that consumer space right now that you indicated really does have the bleeding edge?
Yeah, absolutely. And there's many factors at play there. But I think one of the things is that, just creating an amazing user experience, right? So I think if you turn the clock back a few years, a lot of companies, and maybe less so on the consumer space, but a lot of companies were building just responsive web applications, which have their purpose. They're great for, if you're working on your laptop and you need to transition to a tablet or something like that, but it's not a great experience on a smaller device. So if you're using your phone or even maybe a watch, they don't translate very well. So, I think that the consumer apps have really raised the bar for the user experience expectations, right? And it can be little things. It can be brand, right? It's no longer acceptable to throw up a grayscale or black and white interface on an app.
Throw up is the exact right way to describe something like that graphically.
Yeah, that's your reaction to it. But you're really looking for, something that's branded, something that's beautiful, something where you don't have to click through 10 levels of menus to get to the activity that you want. We're partners with a number of different, mobile platform providers. But, I think about, just take the iOS, the native experience that's capable if you're building apps on iOS. And there's guidelines, and as a partner with Apple, our team needs to go through strict training, and there's standards that we need to follow when we design apps. And those are driven by tremendous amounts of user research and making sure that, the applications that are out there are consistent, are beautiful, are easy to use. And, the Facebooks and the, Twitters of the world are spending inordinate amount of time thinking about that user experience. The benefit to an enterprise, a company's not going to be able to invest as much in that. But by following some of these standards, by working with a firm like Insight and the BlueMetal team, you're going to get the benefit of those years of experience and the adherence to those best practices in your enterprise app. So I think that just consistent, beautiful, easy user experience is the bar that's been set.
Exactly. How far down the road is it going to be before you see this real game theory approach to enterprise applications? When is going to be the tipping point where we see the Pokemon Go, gotta catch 'em all approach to doing your expenses in Concur?
Yeah, no, I mean, we laugh about it, but actually we got a call a few weeks ago from a past client that is building, it's an ISV, but they build enterprise software. And they had an idea to, gamify, it's basically identifying resources. So if you're a field worker and you're out in the field and you're trying to identify, a resource, whether it be, and it can be specified for different companies, but, we'll build applications for the insurance industry, for the, communications industry, where they've got to be out there, inspecting locations, doing an appraisal, if there's an accident, going and doing, actually looking and doing evaluation of the impact. And so thinking about that, where you're blending, real world with, augmented reality, there's actually some great use cases for that in the enterprise. And so we got a call, right after Pokemon took off saying, hey, I need to launch V2 of this app. We need to do augmented reality. I want to gamify some of this stuff. Now, I mean, gamification can mean many different things. It's not just augmented reality. So I think, if it's the expense reports, maybe you get points and you get a bonus at the end of the month if you're the quickest to get your expenses in on time. So I think there's plenty of ways you can look at that. But I think, if anything, just creating more immersive experiences. I mean, I think the Pokemon thing is fun because it's competitive, but also because you get to enter this alternate reality. And we look at things like HoloLens and the work that we're doing in that space, with customers that want to create these super immersive experiences. Some of it's gamification, some of it's, virtual reality. But I do think you're already starting to see that kind of bleed its way into the enterprise space.
It'll be fun. I'm sure there's going to be some great stories about things that have gone really, really well with that, and other ones that have just gone so sideways, all you can do is laugh.
Yes, absolutely.
We need to take a short break, so let's come back right after this.
Business today is all about productivity, efficiency, and scale, but setting these things in motion requires a dose of creativity. In a world of spreadsheets and data analytics, what if there was a way to achieve productivity through creativity? Introducing Microsoft Surface Studio, an entirely new device designed to empower creators to create. Immerse yourself in your work like never before with the 28-inch Pixel Sense display that provides unrivaled picture quality to bring your best work to life. Work weightlessly with its zero-gravity hinge that moves the display from a desktop to a drafting table with the single motion of your hand. And work confidently with powerful 6th-gen Intel Core processors and discrete NVIDIA GeForce graphics, making it ideal for running professional-grade software like SolidWorks, Adobe Premiere Pro, and Autodesk. The Surface Studio is a game-changing new device. No more hunching over small screens. No more multiple monitors. No more cluttered desks. Just a single beautiful digital canvas that can run 4 programs in full size at the same time. To pre-order your Surface Studio now, visit insight.com/Surface Studio. Microsoft Surface Studio, making creativity the new productivity.
You mentioned a few minutes ago one thing that got me thinking more about cloud. I mean, cloud is such a big, big, big conversation, and everybody's trying to figure out how they can create that access. And you mentioned trust with cloud, which I think is one of the major things around adoption. So, as it pertains to cloud applications or more workplace enterprise apps, what are the pros and cons in each of those categories? Is there something big that leads people to cloud or something big that keeps them in their own space?
Yeah, I mean, yes and no. But I think from our perspective, we work with a lot of regulated industries. So healthcare, financial services, government, defense. And understanding their unique needs is really important. So partnering with a firm like Insight and BlueMetal, we have the benefit of years of experience understanding the regulations in those industries and what's important, right? We were one of the first, actually, I think we were probably the first in the country working with a local health system, Steward Healthcare, to meet meaningful use criteria by deploying, and I'll explain what that is, but deploying basically a patient provider portal in the cloud. So this was a big push as part of the Medicare reform to improve people's awareness of their health record. That's what meaningful use is trying to drive in this case. And so there was a requirement for health systems to get patients after they have an encounter, they go to their doctor, they see a specialist, to be able to log in after the fact and see all the notes. And then to be able to aggregate that across multiple visits so they can see a comprehensive list of all their medications or the history of maybe an illness that they're managing. And so there was a big driver. There was financial incentive from the government and health insurers to get this up quick. And so we worked with Steward Healthcare and just understanding the complexities of a hospital or a health system. We understood that getting it to the cloud was going to be the fastest way to market. But that was a huge hurdle to put billions of records, personally identifiable health information in the cloud. required very advanced understanding of security, identity management, threat detection, encryption, multiple layers of encryption. So, I don't want to scare people away, but I want to recognize that there is a real concern there when you're putting health information, financial information, defense information. But other people are doing it. And I think that was kind of the turning point, is seeing that, the early adopters were out there, and, it was safe. And when you actually boil it down, it makes a lot of sense. We've worked with clients who, luckily not for our sake, but or for our doing, but maybe historically have had large data breaches. And you can almost go one by one and realize that the data breaches were caused by some mishandling of information or credentials within their own data centers or their own networks. And the companies like Microsoft or AWS or some of the other cloud providers are spending billions of dollars on security, right? That's one of their top focuses. Whereas, every individual enterprise cannot spend billions of dollars on security. So, I think there's a mind shift among technology leaders in enterprise, CIOs, CTOs, that the cloud is potentially a safer place to put your confidential data, as long as you do it right and you follow best practices, than leaving it in your own data center. And then if there's a breach, if your data gets stolen, quite frankly, that's Microsoft's problem. Let's say if it's in Azure, it's not necessarily your liability. So I think that, there's been this shift over the last, say 3 or 4 years to say, what? Rather than worry about all these breaches and these threats on our own, let's work with a provider, a cloud provider that spends, billions of dollars and thousands of person hours really thinking about how to protect data. And then I'd say the other kind of lead into that is so many companies have moved to online productivity tools like Office 365. So they don't want to manage Exchange, they don't want to manage AD, they don't want to manage SharePoint, and for some reason they were very comfortable moving those tools online. Maybe because they were brands that they understood, Exchange, SharePoint, AD, but. We worked with, for example, financial services firms that would say, hey, we're never going to put our data in the cloud. And we'd say, well, you realized last year you put all your email in the cloud. And that has all the same sensitive data that your enterprise systems have. So what's the holdup, right? And the light bulb goes off and they say, oh, yeah, if all of our email is up in Azure effectively through Office 365, it's probably safe to put some of our portfolio data up there as well.
I think, and it does all come down to trust. And as soon as somebody sees an example of it working well, then you're really off to the races. So, great example there, showcasing how a sensitive industry like healthcare can really take advantage of providers who are offering, like you said, that focus, billions of dollars, hundreds and thousands of man hours to make sure that they're going really deep in an area to be effective and efficient and secure. So that's got to be just a table stakes consideration for anybody looking to make development in this area.
Yeah, absolutely.
But there are some areas that we're never going to get to just because it's not the core focus of what a particular business is doing. And that's where some of the bigger challenges that IT faces, like collaboration apps and other efficiency applications that employees are using on their own, but without the permission of IT. Mm-hmm. So how do you get a handle on shadow IT with respect to some of these materials, and how do you start to mitigate the risk?
You're absolutely right. And, if you think about how people use their phone and what they're doing and, tools like Dropbox or other non-enterprise approved, collaboration tools, it is a challenge. And I think there's an educational component. I think there are tools, there's, mobile device management tools, and, Insight provides a lot of help with enterprises around how to manage that. But ultimately, my philosophy is you need to make it easier for them to use the enterprise tools than it is to use the consumer tools. So building applications that, for example, we use an amazing, I've mentioned it a couple times, but expense management tool at Insight. So when I'm on the road, it's easier to just open up an app and take a snapshot of my receipt than it is to put my receipt in my wallet, take it back to the office, scan it in, and add it to my expense report. So in that sense, that's not highly confidential information, but, in that sense, it's much easier for me to upload it via an app and dispose of it before it could ever, escape, than it is for me to, carry it along and potentially lose it. And I think if you apply that same philosophy to enterprise data, you've got to give your employees tools. For example, take OneDrive, right? So OneDrive is tied to Office 365. You can put security policies on there. You can put digital rights management on there. You can, map drives right from your laptop or your phone. It's just as easier than Dropbox. And there's, Dropbox has enterprise solutions as well. But just to compare those two, if you're putting account information or employee information up in Dropbox to share with colleagues, there's a huge risk there. If you deploy a tool that is not only as easy to use, but is integrated in with your security systems, integrated in with your other tools, then you're actually providing your employees a solution that's easier than the consumer solution. And so they're going to gravitate towards that. And I think if you extend that to all the areas, where you're, potentially leaking confidential information, you'd find that, an investment in a really good mobile experience, a really good, cloud experience, can actually mitigate that risk.
Such an important point about making those applications even easier to use than what is commercially available. I actually happened to overhear a part of a conversation today with respect to HR management and recruiting and getting recs approved. And the comment was, you know what, it's actually easier to do this on the mobile application than it is on the desktop site. And I laughed a little bit to myself, knowing that I would be able to use that little anecdote in just a couple of hours.
Yep.
But there's still, to me, I put myself in the shoes of a working professional. And there's a number of places where I feel like there are gaps. And one of them is productivity. I personally lean on applications like Trello and Todoist to help me organize myself. So, if I may opine for a minute, I think that there's some thought that needs to be put in around ease of use still.
Yeah.
And the other thing that's always near and dear to me is thinking about how do you brand these solutions? Because to me, that's the other major gap that exists here is you bring people into an experience that just feels foreign because it's not the same look, feel, color, voice, tone, and approach. It's almost like you have to have applications that really fit into the culture of the business.
Yeah, and Trello is a good example. We use that quite a bit, and so maybe there's a little bit of a mind shift here too, where maybe to contradict everything we've said, maybe there's a place for consumer apps in the enterprise, right? You think about a Trello, or there's a suite of project management tools out there, cloud-based, that are exceptional. And we use those to manage our projects. We didn't build an application to manage our projects. But I will say we have an enterprise account, right? And so we manage, people's access to that. We've done some due diligence to understand that they have a good security model, that we're not going to leak our data, that, other tenants aren't going to be able to see, our project information. So I think there's a due diligence, responsibility on the IT side to say, hey, there may be a suite of consumer-ish apps, or maybe they're just public apps that are targeted towards the enterprise, that are appropriate and that have a role within our organization. And again, that can actually improve the user experience. If they're seeing that an organization is open to adopting leading edge, and I think Salesforce is probably the best example. And Microsoft has a good tool with CRM, but with Salesforce now part of the family, right? I think that there's part of what you see in enterprises. There's a general acceptance of that being a core enterprise application, even though it's not hosted in the data center. I think one of the key things, though, to improve that user experience and improve security is thinking about identity, right? So brand is a big part of a cohesive user experience, but identity is maybe a more subtle and more technical part of it, but it's just as important. So understanding, and there's a lot of tools, we do these types of projects all the time, but understanding how you can create an experience, whether somebody's in the office or whether they're working from home or the road. Being able to log in once and access a suite of tools, it makes the accessibility and user experience so much better. The likelihood that somebody's actually, if you decide as an enterprise to use Salesforce, it's a lot easier, and Salesforce supports it, to federate your identity. So they log into their laptop when they sit down, or they're on their mobile app on their phone, and they log in once and they can access all those resources. So, identity, we haven't talked about it yet, but, when you're thinking about these suites of applications or apps that are hosted on the phone or tablet, or you want to be able to get them on your laptop or the phone, having a consistent ID, a consistent login, one secure password, not 100 passwords that are written on sticky notes on your desk, is a huge improvement in both the experience, but also the security of those systems.
There's a very long list of application discussions we could get into, and a bazillion, that's an accurate number, by the way.
Exactly a bazillion.
Examples that we could be drawing inspiration from, and, armchair quarterbacking a little bit on their effectiveness. But, for somebody who is looking at adding to that library of applications to help develop their workforce in terms of productivity, collaboration, other functionality with travel expenses, the myriad things that every workforce needs their employees to be doing routinely to keep things above board, on the up and up, moving forward. Make it simple for me. In one line, how would you coach them to start thinking about their application environment?
Yeah, one line's going to be tough, but I think start small, right? Pick individual tasks and build apps that support those tasks. So, find areas, and I know I'm on like line 3, but it's all the same theme, is that, find discrete processes in your business. And maybe this is new terminology, but appify them, right? Find ways where you can develop discrete applications and get them in front of your users quickly. That's how you're going to show the greatest value. It's how you're going to transition. We started this conversation talking about, workforce expectations. This is all being driven by the consumerization of IT. So start small and get stuff out there quickly.
That was actually a very, very good summary. You could basically tweet that, which is great.
Yeah, thank you.
Well, Matt, I so appreciate all your thoughts on this and really enjoyed getting to catch up with you. And I'm so grateful you were able to join us for a great episode of Technomics.
Yeah, thank you. And it's an exciting topic. I think it covers, the modernization of IT in the workforce. And we love helping clients and helping our own teammates work more efficiently.
Thank you so much, Matt Jackson, Director of Services with our BlueMetal Group at Insight. Thanks for listening to Technomics. If you want to find more episodes, you can download the podcast from iTunes, Google, or your favorite podcast provider. And for more stories on intelligent technology, visit insight.com.